Hello chess family, it's me National Master Jesse James, and today we're going to be taking a look at rule number 5, make as few pawn moves as possible. In this game we're going to be seeing Morphy play with the black pieces yet again, just showing how strong these principles are. Just because you're white does not mean you're going to get the advantage or that you're going to be winning the game. Here we go, Pawn Morphy is going to go ahead and conquer his opponent. We started with e4, e6, we're going to go ahead and forgive Morphy for playing the French defense. I'm pretty sure at the time he thought it was a good idea, but the word's out, the French defense is just losing. So, what's better than one pawn in the center? Two pawns, d4 gets played, pawn d5 for the French defense, and here white chooses to play pawn e5 to get the advantage. Here, why is it an advantage? Well, from 5 and back, this is go ahead and be black's territory, and from 4 and back, this is white's territory. Here you can see that white is already invading his opponent's territory with this e5 pawn. This is the advanced variation, just because you advance your pawn up one square. It's not that it's very complicated, it's just because it moves up once. For those interested, there's a lot of different ways for white to get an advantage here. Knight c3 is the Paulson variation, so if they take, you just take back with your knight, and you have a knight in the center, which is strong. You have the Tarrasch variation, which is going to be knight to d2, slightly different, just not allowing the bishop to b4 pin. As well, we could play pawn c3 here. And yeah, there's lots of different ways to get an advantage here. Maybe I'll do a video later on this. But in this game, James goes ahead and plays pawn e5, which is a good way to play against the French. And what do we do here for black? The main idea in the French defense for black is to try and attack the d4 pawn. So, what do we play here? The best way to attack a pawn is to use a pawn. Pawn c5 gets played. Here, let's go ahead and defend. White plays pawn to c3. Definitely the best move in the position. Hopefully no one was thinking we should take here on c5, as well this is only just going to be helping out Pawn Morphy here. After bishop takes c5, we're going to develop one piece, and we can see here that black has two pieces out, two pawns in the center, while white only has one. Here black can only be better in this position. So James does the correct move on pawn c3, so when the pawn does take back, we keep the pawn chain together. Well, Pawn Morphy's turn, let's keep developing, and we're going to concentrate on attacking this d4 pawn. What's the rule? Develop knights before bishops. What do we play next? Knight c6, again putting pressure on the d4 pawn. Here, do not make too many pawn moves. James plays pawn to f4. He's doing okay with this, although I don't like this already. Again, it's making weak squares in his own camp. Here, basically the e3 square. How do we know it's weak? Well, whenever you're looking at a position, you always want to see how many times a square is being protected by your pieces. And here, the pawn on f2 was guarding this e3 square twice with the bishop on c1. Now it's only defended one time. And you're going to see how the e3 square is actually going to be one of the weakest squares and how Morphy wins at the end because of this weakness. Also, be careful about moving your f-pawn out too early in the game, as this does allow queen h4 check and some variations. You can play the check here, but it won't be too good as white can block. So let's just keep up with the development. Here, develop and attack the d4 pawn. Where do you move your queen to attack d4? You're going to be using what's called the X-ray attack. Just like with an X-ray can see through you whenever you go to the hospital, the same thing is going to happen here. We're going to look through another piece to attack the d4 pawn. Hopefully you found it. Queen to b6 gets played, putting pressure on d4. Here now we have 1, 2, 3 attackers, and white only has 1, 2 defenders. Only one way to defend here. Knight to f3. If you looked at bishop e3, be careful. The queen was not only putting pressure on d4, but also the b2 pawn, which stops the bishop from being developed. So here, Morphy can just go ahead and grab the pawn. So the correct move was played, develop knights before bishop, knight to f3. Let's keep up with the development. Here, let's develop the light square bishop. $1,000,000 question, where does it go? Well, it's the easiest $1,000,000 question because there's only one square to go, so bishop d7 gets played. And again, don't make too many pawn moves. Pawn to a3 got played. Here this may look like a strange move, but the idea here is a stop after c takes, maybe some stuff like knight to b4. Now this is a very defensive move, but again, it's just a waste of time. Why should we be trying to bring out the bishop so that they can castle? Alright, black to move, develop knights before bishops. We're going to go ahead and develop this knight. Where should we move it to? Here we're actually going to develop it on the rim again with knight to h6. Now again, this may seem like a strange move, but the idea is to attack the d4 pawn. Where's the knight heading to? Here the knight's actually heading to f5 to attack d4. As you can see, we already have 1, 2, 3 attackers. This is going to add a 4th piece to it. Well, white needs to figure something out. White went ahead and played pawn to b4. Again, do not make too many pawn moves. Here, there's only one good move here for black. Hopefully you can find the move. Should we play c takes b4, pawn c4, or c takes on d4? Only one of these is the strongest. There's the second best move, and then there's the worst move. Which one do you think it is? All right, here we go. For those of you who said c takes b4, this is actually pretty good for white here. After this, white plays a takes b4, and now you've actually only helped open up the rook here. And well, the d4 pawn is going to be very hard to attack because, well, it's just going to keep getting defended here. All right, next move up, pawn c4. Terrible move. Remember, whenever you got more pieces out, as Morphy does with 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces out, you need open lines and diagonals. What does that mean? You need pawn trades so that your pieces can get through. As you can see here, when you played pawn c4, you've closed the position. Your pieces can't get in because they're being blocked by the pawns. So this move would actually help out white because, well, since white pieces are all asleep, you cannot break through to attack anymore. That just leaves the last move, which is the best move, c takes d4 here. Why is this the best? Well, after c takes d4, they're going to take back, and now you see the d4 pawn is undefended by another pawn. So now we can start putting pressure on it. Well, before Morphy puts pressure on the d4 pawn, he decides to develop his rook. Where's the best place for it? b8, c8, or d8? Remember, rooks like open files here, so where should the rook move to? Here, the best move, of course, is rook to c8. You got this beautiful open file here. This rook's going to be doing lots of work here. Look, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces ready to attack. And James only has 1 piece out. The game is not going to last very long now. And now he goes ahead and plays bishop to b2. Now this is almost forced here, as well. The knight's coming to f5 to attack the d4 pawn. Let's go ahead and get that knight to the best square. Knight f5, and now we see 1, 2, 3 attackers here, and James has 1, 2, 3 pieces defending. All right, it's white's turn, and it's already very hard for white to make a move now. The knight's jumping into this e3 square as we looked at earlier because the f-pawn was moved. This is now a weakness that the knight can jump to. Let's see here. You have to be very careful on how you develop your pieces here. Mostly any move you make here can lose here. What do I mean by that? Well, let's take a look. Where is a good square for the bishop to move to? Well, a6 is bad because they'll just take with the queen. We take with the pawn. So that only leaves d3 and d2. And both these moves are not looking too good. If you play bishop d3, you just lost a pawn. This bishop blocks the queen from defending on d4. So, free money, we just go ahead and take. Knight takes, bishop takes, and then queen takes. And here black is just up a pawn. And it's going to be very hard for white to castle here too. Oof. Okay, can we just play something like bishop e2? Well, you can if you want to lose the game. Here, there's lots of different moves to win. I like the simple one, knight to e3 here. This is going to go ahead and fork the queen and the pawn here on g2. I think here white has to play something like queen d2. And now, well, I won't show you this move, but try to find it by yourself. Here, there's a nice way to win the game. I don't want to show the move because this actually comes up later on in the game, and I want to pose the question to you later on. So, what else can we do? Develop the knight? Developing the knight is going to go ahead and lose the game too. Let's try knight to d2. What do you play here to win? Hopefully remember the move from the last variation. Yep, the knight's blocking the queen, so again, we can take the pawn on d4 again. This d4 pawn is very weak, and it keeps falling. What about knight c3? Now, instead of blocking the queen, we block the bishop. You do have to play correctly here, but it's not too hard. We're just going to go ahead and take the pawn. Takes pawn, and you could take back with the queen here, as you're very happy to trade off queen since you're just up an extra pawn. Oh my gosh, what do we do here? Here, white, or James, finally went ahead and said, I'm going to play queen to d3, and this is the tactic I want you to find. All right, black to move and win. What do you play here? You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces ready to attack, and James only has 3, and the king's still in the center. What do you do when your opponent's king's in the center? You attack him. So look for it. Checks, captures, and threats. Hopefully you found the move. Here we're looking for forced move. And what's the next piece we should be looking at moving? The bishop, of course, because we want to get ready to castle. And now we look at the different squares the bishop can go to. e7, a very good square. It'll develop and get ready to castle. Nothing wrong with this move. D6, well, pawn just takes. C5, well, pawn takes again. Bishop takes b4. That's interesting. Is that the move? It is here. After bishop takes b4 check, yes, we are going to be sacrificing a piece, which just means we're going to give a piece of higher value for lower value. But the reason why we do this is to open files and diagonals. Remember, we want to attack the opponent, but our opponent's pawns are in the way. So this is exactly what we need. If our pieces can become active, then we win the game. So bishop takes b4. Check. If they don't take back, they're just losing. So they took. And here, the next question. Do we take with the queen or do we take with the knight? One wins and the other one will be losing. All right, if you said queen takes b4 check, now you are just losing here. Although you did make a double attack for attacking the king and the undefended bishop, you should always look at your opponent's resources. Here there's many ways to go ahead and defend. You have queen d2 to defend because, well, you're blocking the check and also defending your bishop. You have bishop c3 here, which is just saving the bishop and also attacking the queen. Here black must move back. And now if white's smart, they'll play something like bishop e2 and just get ready to castle. And now they're up an extra piece here. Okay, so that just leaves the other move, which is knight takes b4. Not only does this win a pawn, but it creates a double attack. Well, I'm pretty sure you see the first one, which the knight is attacking the queen. But do you see the second threat here? Here, the second threat is just the elementary fork, knight c2 check, attacking the king and the rook. Here you can see the rook is opened up here, so it's defending the c2 square. The bishop's opened up here, and all these pieces have just become active, and white cannot defend from all these threats. In fact, there's really no good square for the queen to move to. Go to e3, the knight just takes. You can't stay there as it takes. You can't go to c3, rook takes. Where else can we move the queen to? b3, undefended piece, you just lost the queen. Remember, look for the checks. Knight c2 check, because, well, we just did a discovery here. The queen's pretty much forced to take, and then we'll take. Oh my gosh, where else can we move the queen to? How about a3? Oof, just fell for a fork again. Sorry about that. Where else can we move? Queen e2. Knight c2 check can still get played, but also we have another good move here. I won't say because this actually happens in the game. And, well, I guess you could bring the queen back to d1, but you didn't really get anything out of that, right? So, after knight takes b4, queen d2 gets played. Now you can play knight c2 check here and get the advantage, but as the saying goes, when you see a good move, look for a better one. What's another strong move we can play here? White is about ready to resign because they just don't have any pieces in this game. Here, black went ahead and played, or Morphy plays, hopefully found the move, rook c2, attacking the bishop and attacking the queen for a nice fork here. Where does the queen move now? Again, the queen has nowhere to go to. Can't go to e2 or f2 because the rook. Can't go to c3 because the rook. Can't go to d3 because the knight. Can't go to e3 because the other knight. The queen has to go all the way back to d1. And now game over. Here there's many moves to win. Morphy plays the prettiest one, of course. What would you play here? Here you can trap the queen. Yep, simple chess. Knight e3 gets played and the queen is trapped and white goes ahead and resigns. Some people may think this may be a bit premature, or they don't need to do this right away, but the game is just so bad here. You're about to lose your queen, black's attack is still going, and look, if you're ever worried, you can just go ahead and castle, and you get the last piece into the game. This is a very fine demonstration of do not make too many pawn moves. As you see, your opponent can just keep bringing out pieces, and then attack you where the weaknesses are. Hope you enjoyed the game. We'll see you in the next one.